March 4, 2024, 8:17 a.m. I stood at the ATM outside my house, the air cold enough to sting. I'd only come to withdraw $40 for bread and milk. The screen blinked, once, then showed a line that didn't make sense. Account blocked. Access denied. Authorized person, Joshua Moore. Joshua. My son. For a moment, I thought I'd misread it. I tried again. Same message. The machine swallowed my card, and with it, the ground under my feet. I opened my phone. One message waited at the top. From Amber. My daughter. Mom, don't worry. We took care of everything. The house is sold. It's time for a care home. You'll be comfortable there. I stood on the pavement, phone shaking in my hand. The wind caught the edge of the receipt still hanging from the ATM, fluttering like a white flag. They'd done it. My own children had sold my house, closed my accounts, and decided where I should live, as if I were luggage to be moved, not a woman who raised them. The street blurred. The hum of traffic turned hollow. All I could hear was my heartbeat, slow, stunned, unbelieving. How could they do this to me? If you want to know how I reached this moment, stay with me. Because now, I'll tell you everything. My name is Evelyn Moore. I am 68 years old. Until a few months ago, I still thought of myself as Mom, or Nurse Evelyn, or Henry's wife. Now, I'm learning what it means to be just me. For 27 years, I worked as a nurse in the surgical ward at St. Joseph's Hospital. I knew the smell of disinfectant better than perfume, the sound of monitors better than music. I stood through double shifts, holidays, and the long nights when other people's mothers were dying and their children were crying. I was always the steady one, the voice that said, "It's all right, take a breath." At home, I was that same voice for my family. Henry, my husband, was a builder. We bought our first plot of land on Birch Street in 1983, and together, brick by brick, we built a house that smelled of cedar and coffee. The kind of house where children's drawings once covered the fridge, and the back door never quite closed right because little hands had slammed it too many times. Amber was born first, then Joshua. Amber had Henry's eyes, sharp, decisive, seeing everything. Joshua had my patience. For years, I thought we were a solid family, the kind that bends but never breaks. When Henry died, I learned how wrong I was. He passed away 3 winters ago. A heart attack, sudden and quiet, while he was out shoveling snow. One moment there was the scrape of the shovel, the next, only silence. I remember his gloves lying by the porch, the snow still falling over them. After the funeral, Amber took over the arrangements, practical as always. Joshua managed the bills, saying, "Let's keep things organized, Mom." I was grateful. I thought they were helping. I didn't notice that help had turned into permission. In those early months, they called me every day. "Did you eat, Mom? Don't forget your medicine. You shouldn't be alone in that big house." Their concern felt warm then. Now I can see the pattern. It was never care, it was calculation. By the following summer, their visits changed. Amber started arriving with folders and notes. Joshua sat in my husband's chair, tapping through his banking app like the house was a spreadsheet. They used soft words that hid sharp edges. "Mom, you shouldn't handle the bills by yourself anymore. Mom, it's safer if we manage your account. Mom, just sign here, it's just a joint authorization." Each phrase landed like a drop of water on stone. Harmless alone. Devastating over time. Still, I wanted to believe them. They were my children. I raised them to be responsible, to care for family. So I smiled and nodded and handed them the paperwork they asked for. When I hesitated, Amber would sigh gently, the way I used to when she was little. "Mom, please. We're only trying to protect you." I wanted to trust that word, protect. I'd spent my life protecting them, from storms, from hunger, from the world. It never crossed my mind that I might need protection from them. Joshua started talking about long-term solutions. He said things like retirement planning and estate alignment, words that sounded official and harmless. He'd read somewhere that shared ownership simplified inheritance. I thought, why not? I didn't think I was signing over control. The first real crack appeared last spring. It was a Thursday evening. Amber came for dinner, bringing takeout instead of groceries. She asked, halfway through her salad, "Mom, maybe we should put the house in all our names. It'll make taxes easier." I laughed then, light-hearted, unguarded. "What, sweetheart, you think I'll forget where I live?" She smiled, but it wasn't the smile I remembered. It lingered too long, didn't reach her eyes. Later, when she hugged me goodbye, her arms felt loose, distracted. She was already elsewhere, thinking of numbers, not memories. After that night, I noticed small things. Mail arriving already opened. Bank statements missing from the counter. Joshua started helping me with online banking, saying it was too complicated now. I let him. I told myself it was convenience, not control. By autumn, the tone had shifted completely. They no longer asked, they told. "Mom, stop paying for the gardener. You don't need a big yard." "Mom, we'll handle the taxes, just sign this." "Mom, maybe it's time you stop driving." Each suggestion came with a smile. Each smile chipped away at my independence. The house that once felt alive began to feel like a hospital corridor, quiet, overmanaged, too clean. I started hearing my own voice from years ago, "It's all right, take a breath." Only now, I was saying it to myself. Through all of it, I tried to hold on to the simple rhythm of my days. Coffee in my favorite mug, watering the ferns by the window, reading Henry's old paperbacks in the evening. Those small acts became a kind of defiance. I didn't know then that my children were already making plans behind my back. Plans with my name at the top of every page. The betrayal didn't come overnight. It came in whispers, in signatures I thought were harmless, in the slow erosion of trust. And when it finally arrived, it didn't sound like thunder. It sounded like a text message, bright and neat. "Mom, don't worry. We took care of everything." That was the moment I stopped being Mom. That was the moment I became Evelyn again. The night Amber first said it, the kettle clicked off. Steam fogged the window. I felt the weight of Henry's mug. Amber pushed salad around her plate, then looked up like she was remembering something small. "Mom, maybe we should put the house in all our names. It'll make taxes easier." I laughed because the sentence sounded like a costume. "What, sweetheart, you think I'll forget where I live?" She smiled, too easy, too long, and changed the subject to window repairs. When she left, she wiped her prints from the counter with a napkin. The next week, Joshua arrived with his laptop and a tone I knew from hospital administrators, calm, practiced, final. He sat in Henry's chair. "Mom, the online banking keeps giving you trouble. Let me streamline it. Fewer passwords. Fewer mistakes." "What mistakes?" I asked. He waved a hand. "Nothing serious. Just let me help." It felt harmless to let him tidy icons and rename folders. He wrote my passwords on a sticky note, then took the note to keep it safe. That was the first thing that went missing. After the funeral the calls changed, then the visits. They arrived with notebooks, pens clicking. Hugs became short, distracted taps on the shoulder. "Mom, you shouldn't be driving at dusk." "Mom, maybe we cancel the gardener, the yard is a liability." "Mom, if you misplace cash, a joint account solves that." Each sentence wore soft shoes and carried a clipboard. I tried to hear love inside them. Mostly I heard evaluation. In June, I found my mail already opened, the letters stacked neatly, a rubber band marking the bills. A note in Amber's careful script rested on top, "Sorted these for you, paid the urgent ones." Another evening, Joshua texted at 9:44 p.m. Mom, don't worry about the property tax notice. I've forwarded it to my accountant. At the grocery store, my card declined for the first time. The cashier whispered, "It happens," and pushed the machine toward me again. I nodded and left. Amber began arriving with drafts. She said the word like it was friendly. Here's a simple authorization so Josh can talk to the bank if needed. Here's a healthcare proxy. Just in case. Here's a deed update. Strictly administrative. I took each paper to the dining table Henry made. I read the titles. I signed the ones that looked harmless. I put the rest in the drawer under the napkins. At night, I read the fine print with the magnifying glass we bought when his eyes got tired. I started keeping my own small ledger, when visits grew shorter, when questions grew sharper, when my name appeared after theirs on envelopes that used to be mine alone. Then there were the inspections. Amber at the stove, lifting lids. Mom, you shouldn't use this burner, it's uneven. Joshua running his palm along the banister. This rail isn't up to code. They noted things and shook their heads. When I joked to lighten the air, no one laughed. Maybe we should put the house in the cat's name, I said, and Amber answered, be serious, Mom. We didn't have a cat. In August, a new phrase arrived, downsize. You'd love a smaller place, Amber said. Less to worry about. A condo near the ocean, Joshua added. Everything taken care of. I looked out at Henry's lilac bush. Everything? I asked. They both nodded. It felt like an answer and also a warning. At church, Mrs. Patel squeezed my hand and said, your Amber is such a help. I smiled. In the parking lot, I opened my bank app. The login failed. At home, the app opened but the numbers looked smaller. A transfer I didn't recognize sat in the list with tomorrow's date. I called Joshua. What is this? Optimization, he said. We're using a high-yield account. No need to worry, Mom. Why didn't you ask me? We're saving you from decision fatigue. That night, I put Henry's sweater across my lap. My phone blinked with a photo from Amber, an ocean view, gray-blue and smooth. Imagine waking to this, she wrote. I imagined waking not knowing where I was. By September, they had keys I didn't remember giving. I'd find a cabinet rearranged, my spices alphabetized to someone else's logic. The house felt managed. I began to keep my own key ring in my pocket even when I was inside. A neighbor saw Joshua with a real estate agent out front. Just getting comparables, he said when I asked. You never know. I did know. I just didn't know what to do yet. On the first cold morning, the furnace kicked on. I stood in the hallway listening, hand on the wall. I thought of all the rooms I had opened for fevers, birthdays, apologies, how fast a home could turn into inventory. The crack had opened. The pressure built, like water behind a dam. I measured it in small humiliations, a password reset I didn't request, my signature photocopied on their printer, a dinner where Amber corrected how I held the knife. I smiled, nodded, poured tea. And then, I began to pay attention to everything. Firm. It happened on a Tuesday. February 27, 2024. The date is burned into my mind the way a scar holds heat even after it heals. They arrived together, Amber and Joshua, holding coffee cups and smiling like they'd planned a surprise party. Amber kissed my cheek. Joshua placed a white paper bag on the counter. Breakfast, Mom, he said, cheerful, too cheerful. I poured my coffee in silence. I knew the sound of a trap closing, even if I didn't yet know what kind. Amber spread the papers across the kitchen table. They were neatly stapled, printed in blue ink, corners squared. Mom, she began softly, we've been talking. We found a wonderful place for you near the ocean. It's quiet, safe, has a garden. You'll love it. I looked at her, at the smooth calm of her face. What do you mean, place? Joshua leaned forward, the same gentle authority he used as a boy when explaining how to use his new phone. Mom, the house, it's too much. Maintenance, taxes, security. We sold it. It's finalized. My breath left my body like a plug pulled from a drain. You what? Amber reached for my hand. It's okay. You'll be comfortable there. Comfortable. That word again, the one they used when they didn't want to say powerless. I looked down at the top page. Property sale agreement, file #117X, amount, $640,000. Signatures, Amber Moore. Joshua Moore. No Evelyn Moore. Not one trace of me. You forged my signature, I whispered. Amber flinched, then smiled again, trained, mechanical. Mom, don't say that. You signed weeks ago. Remember those forms we helped you with? The ones for tax adjustments? Joshua added quickly, you gave us power of attorney. You said you trusted us. The room tilted. I remembered the paper, the faint blue lines, the line that said authorization for management. I hadn't read beyond that. I thought I was signing convenience. They had made it ownership. I stood up so suddenly that the chair screeched across the floor. You had no right, I said quietly. Amber's voice softened, as if speaking to a patient. Mom, please. We didn't want to stress you. We thought this was best. You'll have your own room, staff to help, a nurse on call. I almost laughed. A nurse, I said. Do you think I've forgotten what that job is? Joshua's smile thinned. Mom, it's done. The transfer cleared yesterday. You'll get the proceeds, don't worry. We just had to make sure everything was secure before the deadline. Secure. Deadline. Words from strangers, not children. I felt something cold unfold inside me, a kind of stillness I hadn't known since the night Henry died. I sat back down. You said you found a place, I said. Where is it? Amber hesitated. Seaside Haven. Just outside Santa Cruz. We already booked the room. Room. Not apartment. Not cottage. A room. The papers blurred for a moment as my eyes stung. I reached for my coffee mug, the one Henry bought me years ago, chipped, brown ceramic, handle worn smooth. I held it until the rim burned my fingers. That was the only warmth left in the room. I remember their voices after that, distant, polite. We'll handle the moving company. You don't have to pack. They'll come next week. The air smelled of their cologne and printer ink. The clock ticked louder than usual. They left smiling, as if they'd just done me a kindness. When the door closed behind them, I stood in the silence, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Then I walked down the hallway to Henry's old wardrobe, the one we'd moved from our first apartment 40 years ago. It still smelled faintly of cedar and his aftershave. I opened the bottom drawer, the one that always stuck a little. Behind his favorite gray sweater was an envelope I hadn't touched in years. My name written in Henry's hand, the ink faded but certain. Inside was a letter. Just one line on the first page. If they ever forget who you are, remind them. Under it, a folded paper, an account summary, dated 2019. A private account in my name only. Balance, $100,000. And attached, a deed. Property owner, Evelyn Moore. Location, Aspen, Colorado. Henry had always been cautious, always preparing for what he called life's left turns. He'd set this aside for me, quietly, knowing the world can twist even blood against you. I sat on the edge of the bed, the letter trembling in my hand. The betrayal that morning had taken everything, money, home, safety. But Henry had left me something deeper, a way out. A reminder that I still existed. For the first time since the funeral, I smiled. Not because I was happy, because I understood. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my return. That night, I didn't sleep. I folded the letter, pressed it into my coat pocket, and opened my laptop. Then I searched one name, Marlene West. My oldest friend, now an attorney. The next morning, I called her. When she answered, her voice was brisk, warm, alive. Evelyn? It's been too long. Marlene, I said, steady now. I need to talk. It's about my children. Silence on the line. Then she said quietly, come in tomorrow. Bring everything. And for the first time in months, I felt something like control return, small, fragile, but mine. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The house was quiet, half empty already. They'd taken boxes from the garage, small things that belonged to Henry, his tools, the old radio, the folding ladder. Little disappearances I hadn't noticed before. I dressed carefully, gray sweater, wool skirt, the scarf Henry bought in Florence. It was my version of armor. By 7:30, I was at Marlene's office, a small brick building near Main Street that smelled faintly of paper and lemon polish. She hadn't changed much, still brisk, neat, eyes that missed nothing. When I told her everything, she listened without interrupting. She looked at the printed bank messages, the sale contract, the text from Amber. Her hands folded neatly over the pages. Evelyn, she said, did you ever sign a lasting power of attorney? I signed something, I said. Amber said it was for tax coordination. Marlene nodded. That's how they do it. If it was filed as durable, they used it to sell your property. But we can challenge it. Everything depends on proof, timing, intention, your mental capacity at the time of signature. And fortunately, you are as sharp as ever. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a single folder. Henry prepared this years ago. He gave me copies of his private arrangements in case something happened to him. That account in Aspen is active, under your name alone. No secondary authorization. He wanted you safe. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The steadiness of his foresight filled the room. Marlene leaned forward. Here's what we do. First, withdraw the Aspen funds into a separate institution. Different bank, different state. Then we freeze access to every account under joint names until the investigation concludes. I'll file a notice of potential fraud on your behalf. No confrontations yet. Quiet steps. Quiet steps. That was how I had survived every long night shift, every crisis, steady hands, no panic. By afternoon, it was done. I transferred the funds. The banker at the Aspen branch verified my ID twice, eyes flicking between my license and the screen. When he handed me the confirmation slip, I felt something settle inside me, a faint pulse of authority. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table under the soft hum of the refrigerator. The air smelled of coffee and printer ink. I opened a blank notepad and began writing, inventory, essentials, keepsakes. I wasn't going to run, I was going to move deliberately. The next morning, I called a moving company, Discreet Residential Transfers, the ad said. They agreed to arrive before dawn on Thursday. I told them only what to pack: photographs, letters, Henry's books, my medical journals, the quilt my mother made. No furniture. I wanted nothing that carried their fingerprints. Then I drafted a note for Amber and Joshua. It took 3 tries to make it sound calm. The final version read: You wanted control, now you can keep the memories. I have taken what is mine and left what you believed was yours. May it bring you comfort. I placed it beside the stack of sale papers they had forced upon me. By Wednesday night, I had already booked a one-way ticket. Aspen. Departure 6:45 a.m. I moved through the house like a guest, touching the walls one last time, hearing echoes of children's laughter that no longer belonged to me. When the movers came, they worked quietly, respectful of my silence. The morning air was cold, silver with frost. At 5:20, I locked the front door and placed the key under the mat, the same way Henry used to when we were first married. The airport was nearly empty. As the plane lifted through the cloud, the city fell away beneath me, roofs shrinking to gray dots, streets curling like forgotten ribbons. I pressed my forehead against the window and whispered, "Goodbye, Henry. I'm doing what you'd have done." When I landed in Aspen, Marlene's cousin met me at the small terminal. She handed me another envelope from Marlene, documents confirming the deed transfer, the utility account, and a small note, "Welcome home." The villa sat just outside town, at the edge of a hill where the air smelled of pine and snowmelt. It wasn't large, but it was mine, every brick, every quiet corner. The keys felt heavy in my palm, the metal warm from my skin. Inside, sunlight pooled on the wooden floor. On the kitchen table waited a note written years ago, Henry's handwriting again, left for me by Marlene's arrangement. "If you are reading this, you chose yourself. I'm proud of you." I sat down and let the words fill the silence. For the first time in months, I breathed without fear. That night, I made tea in a chipped mug and stood by the window. The mountains glowed with faint blue snow. I thought about Amber and Joshua, still certain they had triumphed, still treating my life like an account to be balanced. They would learn soon enough. Marlene had already filed the fraud notification, and the sale proceeds would be frozen by morning. Every email, every signature, every false authorization, they would all be examined. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth, written clearly, officially, without emotion. I wanted my name back on every document where it belonged. As I closed the curtains, a calm certainty spread through me. They had underestimated the quiet of a woman who had spent her life listening to heart monitors. I knew the value of patience. I knew how to wait for a pulse to steady before making the next move. In the silence of that mountain night, I whispered to Henry's memory, "They thought they ended my story. But you and I, we were just turning the page." By the second morning in Aspen, the air smelled of pine and clean frost. I made coffee and checked my phone. 2 voicemails waited, both from Amber, both bright with panic wrapped in politeness. "Mom, call me. There's a bank issue. It's probably a glitch." A minute later, "Mom, please pick up. We need to verify a transfer." Marlene had warned me. When fraud flags go up, the river narrows. Money moves slower. Doors ask for identification. I sipped my coffee and let the machine speak for me. At 9:12 a.m. The bank emailed a confirmation, "Temporary holds placed on the estate account pending investigation." No outgoing transfers would be authorized without my voice on the line. Under that, a note, "Attempted access by non-authorized users, denied." Joshua texted at 9:18. "Mom. Why is everything frozen?" Then, before I could not answer, another, "You're making this harder than it has to be." I set the phone face down and listened to the refrigerator hum, a steady sound that belonged to no one but me. By noon, consequences started asserting themselves in the way consequences do, quietly, then all at once. The moving company Amber had scheduled for my transition demanded payment. The card on file declined. They called her office. At 1:03 p.m. Marlene forwarded a message from the title company, "Disbursement review initiated, proceeds held in escrow pending confirmation of my consent." By late afternoon, Joshua's credit alerts began pinging. A line he'd opened against my house evaporated. His text was shorter, "Fix this." I stepped outside and let the cold sit on my cheeks. I thought of Henry, who used to say, "When the truth arrives, it doesn't shout. It stands there until everyone else gets tired." The first real fracture came from timing. They'd booked a care home with a non-refundable deposit under Joshua's name. Without funds, the charge hit his card and stayed. That evening I cooked eggs and toast. The house was quiet. I slept. News traveled without my help. Quietly, then loudly. Amber sent a longer message, "We were protecting you. Please undo whatever you told the bank." I typed and erased 3 replies before sending none. Silence was a boundary no one could forge. On Friday, utilities they'd switched to their email began sending notices to mine. I forwarded each to Marlene and kept copies. At 10:27 a.m., a courier brought a notarization request. I read twice, signed once, mailed it back within the hour. Procedure is my language. That same afternoon, the care facility called me directly. Mrs. Moore, we were told you're arriving Sunday. We'd love to prepare your room. I could hear kindness in the woman's voice. Thank you, I said. I won't be coming. Please remove my name from your file. Any contract you have is with the person who paid the deposit. She hesitated, then said softly, understood. Marlene called in the evening. The buyers will pause their move-in until this is resolved, she said. Also, Joshua tried to use your health proxy to request records. The clinic refused. They have it flagged. How long will this take? I asked. As long as the truth requires, she said. But the ground is moving. Saturday, Amber drove to my house, the one I no longer lived in. The neighbor, Mrs. Patel, later told me she saw Amber on the porch with her phone pressed to her ear, pacing, waiting for an answer that didn't come. The lock had been changed by the buyer's attorney pending review. Amber had assumed control, and found a doorknob that would not turn. That afternoon, my granddaughter Lily called from her shared bedroom. She spoke in a whisper. Grandma, they're fighting all the time. They say you've made a mess of things. I listened to her small breath on the line and said, I made a boundary, sweetheart. Messes come after people ignore fences. On Sunday, the care home left one final message: failure to appear, deposit retained, reservation cancelled. It was a sentence without drama, precisely the kind I like. Consequences write themselves that way, briefly, legibly, in their own time. By Monday, the investigation had a number. That is how the system tells you it can see you. Joshua sent one more text at dawn: you're destroying the family over paperwork. I stared at the words until they blurred, then answered with the only sentence I could trust. Paperwork is where people show their choices. I put the phone away and opened the curtains. Snow had fallen overnight, soft and careful. The world held its breath. Somewhere, in a room I could picture but would not enter, my children were learning the shape of accountability. I wish I could say I felt triumphant. I didn't. I felt orderly. I felt like the woman I had been for years in the ward, charting, checking, making sure every line matched what the body told us. Justice is not a feeling. It is a ledger that must balance. And slowly, it began to settle, line by line, until the numbers matched the truth. Quietly. At the end. The first morning I woke in Aspen without checking my phone felt strange, almost reckless. The sun came through the blinds in narrow gold stripes, warming the quilt that smelled faintly of lavender and cedar. For a few seconds I forgot who I was supposed to be, not a widow, not a mother defrauded, not the quiet patient woman sorting consequences. Just Evelyn, a woman with coffee to make and a mountain outside her window. I learned the rhythm of this new life one slow detail at a time. At 6:30, the kettle whistled. At 7, I opened the curtains to the valley below, where snowmelt traced silver threads through the pines. At 8, I walked to the small market 2 streets away, the owner greeting me with a nod and a paper bag already half filled with apples and tea. Nobody called me Mom. Nobody called at all. Silence, once heavy, began to sound like ownership. Marlene kept me informed, carefully, like updates on a recovering patient. The investigation is nearly closed, she said one Thursday afternoon. The sales voided, your property restored. Their accounts are frozen pending review. She hesitated, then added, they might reach out again. Decide how you want that handled. I told her I already had. No confrontations, no explanations. Only distance, quiet, legal, absolute. At night, I read by the fireplace. The villa was small, but every creak belonged to me. I kept Henry's letter in the top drawer of the bedside table. Sometimes I touched the envelope before sleeping, the paper cool and thin, as if reminding me that protection can be love, even when delivered years too late. Weeks passed. Snow softened into spring. I joined the library, then a local volunteer group that delivered meals to shut-ins. The irony wasn't lost on me. Every Wednesday, I packed containers, checked addresses, and knocked on doors. Faces lit up when I arrived, not because of what I brought, but because someone had remembered them. It was the same work I'd done all my life, only now it was by choice. One afternoon in late April, I returned from a delivery to find a car parked in the gravel drive. A girl stepped out, 16 maybe, tall, dark hair pulled into a messy braid. My granddaughter, Lily. Her eyes were red. She clutched a duffel bag that looked too heavy for her shoulders. "Grandma," she said. "I don't want to live with them anymore." I stood very still. Behind her, the mountains rose like witnesses. "Did they hurt you?" I asked. She shook her head. "They lie. They say you're confused." But I saw the papers, and I saw what they did. "Please, can I stay with you?" For the first time in months, something inside me broke open, not from pain, but from recognition. I stepped forward and took the bag from her hand. "Of course you can. Here, life begins again." That evening, we made soup together. Lily chopped carrots while I stirred. She told me about her parents, the shouting, the cold war of blame that had filled their house since the investigation began. "They say you'll regret cutting them off," she whispered. I tasted the broth, added salt. "Regret and relief sound similar," I said. "But only one lets you sleep at night." She smiled, tentative but real. We ate at the kitchen table while dusk pressed against the windows. She said the mountains looked like folded blankets. I said they looked like quiet that learned to stand tall. After she went to bed, I wrote a letter, not to send, just to settle the air. Amber and Joshua. I do not hate you. I no longer protect you, either. You made choices. So did I. This is not revenge. This is balance. Mother. I folded it and placed it in Henry's old box beside the deed and the key. Some truths don't need delivery, they only need acknowledgement. The next morning, Lily helped me hang curtains in the guest room. She laughed when the fabric puffed like sails. The house felt lighter with her there, less echo, more pulse. She found my old photo albums and asked about every picture. I told her stories, the day Amber took her first steps, the time Joshua got his hands stuck in a cookie jar. I wanted her to know them as they once were, before fear disguised itself as concern. In May, a small envelope arrived from Marlene. Inside was the final court notice, case closed. Property restored. Fraud proven. Beneath it, a handwritten note, justice done quietly still counts. I stood by the open window holding that paper, the wind lifting its corners. Below, Lily was watering the garden, singing softly to herself. The mountains were still, their silence steady and kind. I realized then that what my children took wasn't my security, it was my illusion that love and obedience were the same. Losing that illusion was painful, but it freed me more completely than any court order could. Now, each morning, I start again. I light the stove, pour water into Henry's old mug, and feel its warmth travel through me. Some days I still think about the house on Birch Street, the scent of lilac, the uneven back door, but I don't ache for it. I outgrew it the day I chose myself. If this story touched a nerve, you belong here. Stay, listen, and remember, silence is not surrender. Sometimes it's the sound of strength gathering. And if you ever reach the day when everything you built seems stolen, take a breath. Step back. Begin again, quietly, but entirely your own. I lost my husband to the quiet cruelty of time, and then I lost my children to the quieter cruelty of greed. They thought I'd fade, that age would make me soft, forgetful, easy to move like furniture. But life has a way of reminding us who we are when everything else is taken. Now, in this small house surrounded by snow and pine, I know peace again. Not the kind that hides pain, but the kind that grows from surviving it. Lily laughs in the kitchen, and I hear a future I once thought was gone. I don't hate Amber or Joshua anymore. Their choices belong to them, my freedom belongs to me. I tell this story not for pity, but for anyone who's been silenced, managed, or dismissed. We are never too old to start over, never too small to reclaim our name. If this touched something in you, stay. Subscribe, listen, and remember, where silence becomes strength, truth finally speaks.